Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our last talk of the evening. We have here the fabulous, the one and the only Emily Velasco, who's going to do a little show and tell of some of the, frankly astonishing things that she makes. So take it away.
Thanks, Barb. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Like Barb said, this is the last talk of the night, so I've kind of set up my living room here as a sort of art show after dark. If you're here from Twitter, I told you to grab a cocktail if that's your thing. I've got my cocktail here. If you're not into cocktails, then you don't have to have a cocktail. I am kind of doing this free form. I'm going to just talk a little bit about some projects that I've worked on over the past few years. I guess a little bit about myself real quick. I am, like people, like I guess I'm in the quote unquote maker community. I don't know if I like to call myself a maker. I don't know that I like to call myself an artist. I just kind of do my thing, and people can call it what they want. I kind of started down this path. Well, I should say, I've been making things my entire life, and that's part of growing up in a creative household. My mom was an artist. Not like a professional artist, but she had a full-time regular job. But she did art always when we were kids, and my dad was a woodworker. Again, not professionally, but he also had a regular job, but he did a lot of woodworking. So I just kind of grew up in a creative environment. So I've always been making things my whole life. But a few years ago, I finally moved to a place where I could have a workshop, and I got a little cottage with a little garage, and I started putting together a workshop for myself. And that really opened up my horizons for the kind of things I could do. And, what really kind of got me down the path I'm on now is that a friend sent me this little Arduino developer kit. And I didn't even know what an Arduino was, but she sent me this thing, and it was an Arduino, and it was a bunch of little spare parts and a whole bunch of little projects. And that kind of got me started. And, it's been, I don't know, 4 years now, 4 years, I think, of just making stuff at this point. And so I want to talk a little bit tonight about my projects, but I want to talk about them in context of my philosophy. I don't like to call it a philosophy, but I guess it is my philosophy of making things. So with that said, we'll start with the first project that I really endeavored to work on some electronics with. And some of you probably seen this, but I haven't shown it online in a while. So I'm going to show it tonight. And I'll talk a little bit about where it came from, and we're going to get into that philosophy, and we're going to talk about how I did it. And so it's here on the floor. And so this thing, if you haven't ever seen this thing, I call this the Selfie Cube. And what we have here is a brass wire, a brass rod frame that's all soldered together. And the core of this thing is this little guy right here. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. And it's going to take a moment to warm up. But what we have here is there you go. All right, can you see? It's got a little screen, and you're going to be looking at yourself on camera, which is not going to be the clearest thing in the world. But that right there, that is a viewfinder out of an old camcorder. And I have a few of these actually, but this is the only one I've built into something. And in the old days, before we had digital video cameras and everything and LCD screens, they built camcorders. I mean, you want to see what you're looking at, right? And they built them with a tiny, tiny little TV inside of the camcorder. And so when you were looking out of when you're looking at what the camcorder is looking at, what you're actually looking at is a tiny little camera or a tiny little TV. And this is literally the same as the old TV that would have been at your parents' house or your grandparents' house. It's a cathode ray tube. It's just shrunk down to a very small size. So a friend of mine, Roger, and he had some friends who told him, we have an old TV. If you want the parts for it, you can come get the parts. And I absolutely love digging through electronic parts and tearing stuff apart. That is my jam, is to just dig through old electronics and see what I can salvage. And I like to salvage all kinds of stuff. So Roger asked me, he knew I liked that stuff. And he said, do you want to come over and help me tear this TV apart? It's at my friend's house. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never taken a TV apart. Like, do you want to come? And I said, yeah, let's do it. And so I went over their house with him and we tore that TV apart. And it was a good time because he had never taken them. And it was a big TV. It was a really big, like big screen TV. We took it apart and I showed him all the kinds of things that were inside of a big screen TV that you can save, because I've taken those TVs apart a lot of times. And when we were done for the day, his friends were like, hey, we have some other stuff if you want it. And one of the things was this camcorder, and it was a Canon camcorder from 1980, I think. So that's really going way back. Like, we're getting all the way back to almost the beginning of like personal video cameras that can record onto a cassette tape, like a video cassette, like a VHS. And this thing was really funky that you had to actually carry a VCR with you. And they gave it to me, and I really wanted to get it working. I couldn't. There was something wrong with it, and as much as I'm able to troubleshoot electronics, I never could. But so now it became salvage time, and salvaging is like the core of my like making an art experience. Like, I salvage everything, and I find things out in the world, and I find ways to repurpose them. So I stripped that thing down to just its guts. And I pulled out everything I wanted out of it. I got a bunch of lenses, and I got a bunch of little motors, and I got a really cool like video vacuum tube thing. But I saved that little viewfinder thing. And I thought to myself, like, what can I do with this? And another part of my like making and building process is to let the materials guide where I go with it. And I thought, like, well, what do I want it to show? And I didn't know, but what I really wanted to do was show this off. You know, it's such a cool thing, like, to see a tiny TV, right? And I wanted to show that off. So I knew I needed to make like an open frame kind of an object that would let you see all of the little details here of how this thing works. And so I kind of hit on the idea of putting together a brass frame. The brass frame is actually part of the wiring. So everything is wired to the frame. And then I added a little video camera. And I don't know, I guess the idea was like people really like to look at themselves. Like, I know we all like to look at ourselves. Even if we don't like the way we like to look at ourselves, right? So I put a little camera, and the camera looks at you while you're looking at it. And so it's the Selfie Cube. Really fun little thing. I have had this around for years now, and it's one of my favorite things I've ever made. And then I have a couple other things. I want to talk a little bit about, like, again, letting the materials guide your process rather than you trying to force the materials to be something that they're not. And I have this guy. I had an idea for a synthesizer like years ago, and what I really wanted to do was have a pendulum. And if you live in LA, you might have been to the Griffith Observatory. And if you've been to the Griffith Observatory, you've probably seen the big, it's the Foucault pendulum. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's a big pendulum in the like atrium of the observatory, and it swings and it keeps time. It's a very old kind of timekeeping thing, and I'm not going to get into how that works. But essentially, like, the pendulum swings, and because of the way the Earth rotates in its like day rotation, the pendulum knocks over little pegs. Well, that idea kind of was kicking around in my head, and I thought, like, what if I could make a pendulum that was a synthesizer? And I played with that and played with that and played with that, and I could not get it to work. And I simply couldn't get it to work because, like, I was conceiving of the physics incorrectly. And so I had to go back to the drawing board. But I really wanted some kind of thing that rocked or swung or like moved under its own power that would synthesize sounds. And eventually what I came up with was this, which I call the orb, or the tumbling synthesizer. And it's sort of the inverse of a pendulum. And if you've ever seen, they make cat toys, but they also make, like, there's these cat toys that the cat can knock it over, and it's sort of an egg, and it tips over, and then it rights itself. And like when it tips over, it drops treats out onto the ground because it's weighted at the bottom. And they also make these as, like, I don't know if you've ever seen these things, but they're like these inflatable punching, like it's like a little punching clown, and like it's weighted in the bottom, and you can punch it and it'll tip over, and then it comes right back up. So instead of a pendulum, I build the synthesizer around that. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and so you can see what it does, and then I'll explain how it works. Okay, so as you can see, like the tone changes as it tilts in space. And what I ended up doing for this was using an accelerometer, and the readings from the accelerometer, which change as the accelerometer tilts, because it's reading its position. It's the same kind of accelerometer you might find in your smartphone that tells your phone, like, I'm tilting you sideways now to take a sideways video, I'm tilting you vertical to take a portrait of myself, whatever. That was what I had started with on that pendulum project, and it didn't work. But I have one inside of here, and so the fun thing about this is you can just set it on the ground and like tilt it, and then just let it rock and roll and rock and roll. It was a fun project, but the reason I bring it up is that like this is an example of when I had an idea that I was trying to force to be an idea and it wasn't working, and then I had to stop and like step back and say like, okay, I'm gonna let the materials, I'm gonna let the world around me direct how this thing goes. And so the pendulum wasn't gonna work, but the concept was still there. And so I had to like let the materials around me tell me, how am I gonna make this concept work? And this isn't the only like iteration of this. I have another one that this is like an orb, and I have one that's a cube. And I'm not going to turn this one on because I was playing with the code and I need to put the original code back on it, and I forgot to put the original code back on it. But it's a similar kind of idea in that like you have a thing that self-oscillates, and in this one it's suspended in a frame and it's got springs. And instead of using an accelerometer, this one uses light sensors and lights. And I'll turn it on. It's not gonna like, you're not gonna be able to hear anything because it's gonna make some horrible noises. But you're not gonna be able to hear anything because I messed up the code. But yeah, so this is another variation on that same concept. So the point of these two ones is like the first one I brought up was like working with materials you find. And the point of these ones is like not getting stuck in a rut of saying like I have to do a thing a certain way. And then gosh, which one next? I have like a bunch, and I have, how much time do I have left? I got 5 minutes, I think. So let's see what what I can talk about before I run out of time here. I want to show you one. This is one that I worked on this pretty recently. We've all been quarantining, right? And hopefully you've been quarantining. I know I have. I haven't really hardly hung out with anyone in a year. This has been a stressful year. I mean, besides the quarantine and like all the like social isolation that's come with the quarantine, there's been like a lot of upheaval. Like we've had a lot of like problems with our government, and we've had a lot of like social norms being broken. We've had like social unrest because of police brutality, and a lot of things were going on this year. And so it was a kind of a stressful year for a lot of people, including me. And this summer, being stuck here at home, I was, what am I going to do with myself? And I decided to start filming lo-fi, like relaxing videos, just for something to do. And I started with a little video of my cat. And I shot a video of him laying out on the grass in the front yard. And all he did was lay out on the grass and flip his tail around. And it was a very serene thing. And I was shooting it on a very old security camera that I have that I got out of some junk at work. And I put it to some lo-fi beats. And I was like, this is pretty nice. Like, I'm feeling relaxed just looking at this cat. And I put it up on YouTube. And then I made another video like that. And then I made another video like that. And then later in the summer, I went to a junkyard near my house, because that's one place I like to go to look for stuff for my projects. Is I really like to go to the junkyard and just see what's there. And I don't mean like a car junkyard, though I do like car junkyards, because you can find all kinds of cool stuff at car junkyards, but it's all car stuff. But I'm fortunate to live near an actual like old school kind of junkyard where they just have like junk. They have a bunch of metal and they have a bunch of like broken machines. And I go there sometimes just to look for inspiration. And I was walking around one day with a friend of mine. If you're in the LA like hacker maker scene, his name is Sean, and you probably know him. If not, it doesn't matter. His name is Sean. I was there with a friend, and I was looking around, and I found this thing, and it was actually an auto thing, which is ironic because like it wasn't an auto junkyard, but it was a thing for testing vacuum level and like air pressure. And I thought that thing's pretty freaking cool. And so I asked the guy how much, and he said $10. And I bought it. And I was like, what am I going to do with this? It had a really big gauge here. And none of this was actually here. Like I ended up putting all this here. But all it had was a big pressure gauge. And I stripped everything out of it. And I sat and thought, like, what does this like tell me? Like, what is this telling me it wants to be? And it was like, well, it wants to be a synthesizer or like something to show video. Because it had this nice big hole here, right? And like, what can you put there? Like, you could put a speaker there, or you could put a screen there. And, you know, I kind of sat and let this like junky old piece of rusty stuff like talk to me and tell me like, what does it want to be? And eventually like it decided it wanted to be a video synthesizer of some kind. And so I had a little LCD screen that actually fit pretty well. And we're getting back to more salvaging here. This lens here, if you remember, when I said that my friend Roger asked me to help him take that TV apart, like, and that was 2 years ago, and I don't throw anything away. So like when I helped him take that TV apart, I saved some of the things from that. And one of the things I saved was some lenses, because those TVs have big lenses in them. And one of the lenses was perfectly sized for this hole right here. And I thought, you know, I think that this would be like a nice thing to put in front of the LCD screen to give it some depth and some texture. And like, you know, like that was not part of the plan originally, but the materials just kind of spoke to me and said like, this is going to work. And so I gave it a little like on a bubble screen here. And then I grabbed up a bunch of other junk that I had. Like I had an old speaker. I had like a cool industrial switch. I had an old, and I don't know where half this stuff came from anymore. And then I had a really nice like Bakelite switch here. And what I thought was like, well, what if this was sort of like, what if we had like an alternative history? Like, what if the past was different than it is? And what if like in the 1960s, when this thing dates from, some company sold a little personal TV, like a little personal video device? Like, what would that look like? And what would it look like today? Like, if someone had made a device in the 1960s to play videos, and like it might be kind of limited because the technology was limited. So it was like, well, I want to put videos on this, but like maybe the videos have to be short. Maybe we can't put like The Hangover on here. Maybe we can't put, I don't know, what's a movie that's out right now? I don't know. We can't go to the movies anymore. I don't know what any movies are out right now. You know, you can't put a whole movie on something from 1960 if you're limited by technology and it's being portable. So I thought, like, maybe the movies, maybe your recordings are a minute long or less. And so I started like assembling all these little videos, and I thought like, well, also the thing is old now. So like maybe it doesn't work quite right. And what I came up with was this thing, and I called it the Portavid. And it's really simple. Like the idea is like, you know, there's not a lot of functionality because like it's the 60s and they didn't have the technology to give it a lot of functionality. So all it is you press a button, and I hope to God this works because sometimes it doesn't. Let's see, is it gonna work? Please work. All right, it's gonna be stubborn. Come on, you stupid thing. Of course. I was literally just showing this to a friend yesterday and it was working fine. Oh, it's gonna do something, I think. Yes. Okay. Oh God, you can't even see that on camera, can you? Oh, a little bit, a little bit. There you go. Okay, so it just shows little videos on its little screen, and you press the button and it picks a video at random, and then it shows it to you. Let's see if I can get it to play another one. This is kind of the downside of designing something like it doesn't work right. Because when you design it to like not work perfectly all the time, then it doesn't work perfectly all the time. And so you want to show it off to people, and then it like refuses to behave. So I don't know. I really got like into this project, and I'm gonna go ahead and stop it so you don't have to hear me talk over it. I got so, you know what, I forgot to grab it, but I got so into this project that I even made a fake manual for it. Because I really got into the idea that like, what if this was a product from the 1960s, and what would its user manual look like? How would they have written a user manual for this thing for someone who bought it in the 1960s? And like, how would it look now, having like gotten old and tattered and like having been photocopied, and then having a photocopy made of a photocopy? And so I ended up like going on this complete side path of like making a fake manual for it, which really like took me in a whole different direction of like, how do I make paper look old? And yeah, but this was a really like fun example of like reusing stuff, because like the LCD screen was like a partially broken LCD screen I had from something. The case, like I said, came from the junkyard. All the little bits and bobs, like the buttons and everything, were just stray stuff from things I had taken apart. And so this was like a project that was very, very, very dictated by like what I had on hand. And I think it's important to use what you have on hand when you can, because I mean, like for one, I'm cheap and I don't like to buy things if I don't have to. But like for two, I think a lot these days about like our global supply chains. And I honestly feel a little guilty about like ordering things from China. Like I feel a little bit like a jackass, like putting in an order on AliExpress and then knowing that like someone on the other side of the world is packing something up just for me, like special for me, and then putting it on a truck or putting it on a train and then sending it on a boat all the way across the world, and like using all of that fuel and all that stuff and like bringing it to my doorstep. Like that makes me feel bad. So I like the idea of using things that I find that I already have, not just because I'm cheap. I'm gonna not lie and say that's not like a big motivation for it, but like it helps me feel a little bit better about myself to like be reusing waste, things that would just end up in the trash, instead of like making the whole like global machinery like turn its gears up to like bring things to my house. All right, I'm going to talk about like one more project here, and I'm already over time, but Barb says I can talk as long as I like. I don't want to like drag on too long, but I haven't actually shown this one off yet, so I want to show this one to folks. So real quick, for people who follow me on Twitter, I was working in like November and December on a thing that I called the Optical audio decoder. And I'm not gonna try to play it, like turn it on right now, because it's really big and it doesn't fit on camera. But I'll give you a glance at it. It's this thing I came up with because a friend of mine gave me a film projector from the 1930s that can play 16 millimeter film, but it was old and old movies didn't have sound, so the projector didn't have sound. So I thought it would be fun to make a little thing that could play the sound back on my 16 millimeter films that I bought for the projector. And that's what this optical audio decoder like developed out of. Like literally I had started with like, I want to just play sound on my projector, and then it spun out into its own project. And what it does is it has a motor here, and it pulls the film through this little reader head thing that I designed. And if you're not familiar with old film, they had to find a way to put audio on it. And there's a little strip that runs down the side here, and you're not going to be able to see it very well. And I don't think I have one that I can like get up close to the camera. I mean, I do. Let's see here. This is going to be hard to see. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but they put a little strip down the side of the film. Yeah, there's no way you can see that. You can almost see it right here. There's a little strip down the side of the film, and the little strip contains the audio information for the movie. or the film, whatever, educational films sometimes. And I wanted to like find a way to convert that back into sound so I could listen to these old movies that I had that like no one had probably listened to in years because I was getting them from the flea market. Anyhow, I built that thing. It was a lot of fun. But as I was building it, the idea came to me of like, what if I could make a musical instrument out of it? And so after I finished that, I took a break because that was like a good 2-month-long endeavor and I needed a break. But the idea of making a musical instrument out of it kept kind of churning in my head. And I did. I have made a musical instrument out of it. Not exactly, because that thing is still its own thing. But I have built a musical instrument based on the same technology. So here it is. This is my little optical audio synthesizer that I've been working on for the past month. And it uses all the same technology that I developed for that other thing. But this is an outgrowth of that in that, like, one, it's taking things in a different direction, but also, like, I wanted to explore some things that I didn't get to fully explore in that project. Like, for one, this is mostly, well, it's partially 3D printed, but you're gonna have a hard time seeing it. But all this dark brown wood here, this is MDF, medium density fiberboard, which is like the cheap wood that you get, like the really cheap wood, right? It's like, it doesn't have any wood grain. It's made out of like wood pulp. You know, it's like junk wood, but it's cheap and it's dimensionally stable, so it's good for some things. And when I was building the optical audio decoder, I needed a back panel for it just to like close it up. And I grabbed a piece of MDF that I had and I cut a piece out. And it was like, well, it's an ugly brown, so I just stained it like a dark brown, and it had like a cool color to it when I stained it. It had like a cool texture and a cool color, and I thought, like, I kind of want to play with that as like a building material sometime. And so when I set out to make a synthesizer out of the same technology, I decided I was going to use I was going to use that material that I had on hand, because I already had like a big sheet of MDF left over from the other project, and I was going to try to build a synthesizer using that stuff as the body. And I'd never done that before. Like, you know, people don't stain MDF really. Like, people like to stain nice wood, like walnut and maple and cherry and all that stuff. People don't stain MDF. People don't show MDF off very much, but I did. And yeah, so I guess enough talking. I'm going to plug this thing in, and you can see how horrible it sounds, but it totally does work. So I'm going to go ahead and load a film. It plays these little film loops. Let's see. Which film loop do I want to put in here? We will put this one in. And I'm going to move my keyboard so you can watch me load this thing. Hopefully this will show up. Okay, so it's got two rollers here, and you take the little loop of film and you pop the film in here, and it's got a little tensioning lever to keep the film tight, and it's a little tricky because I'm loading it backwards, so forgive me for fumbling with this. And then now the film's in there, and then you close the little reader head, and what that does is it shines a light through the film, and there's a little receiver on the other side. And let's tilt this camera down so you can see it a little bit better. And I'm gonna plug it in. Ooh, you know what? Like, I hate to make you watch me load another film, but I found a different loop I like better. It had fallen on the floor. So I'm gonna make you watch me put a different one in, because I really want to play the other one. You can go ahead and have a drink of your cocktail right now if you want. I'm going to have a drink of my cocktail. Okay. By the way, I just printed these on with a laser printer, and I printed them on transparency sheets. And I just made the patterns in Adobe Illustrator. So this is all like completely like made from scratch stuff. I'm not even using actual 16mm film. All right, come on. I should have just, I should have quit while I was ahead. Okay, there we go. So it's in there. And I have its power supply. Yep. Okay. Plug it in and turn it on. And so now watch, like when I press these keys, each of these keys is hooked to one of these knobs, and the knobs adjust how fast this goes. And by adjusting how fast it goes, you change the pitch. So we can make it go really fast by adjusting the knob there. And then just for fun, I added a little bit of echo and reverb. So we'll go ahead and get the echo going. So just for fun, it's got a little bit of echo and reverb on it. And yeah, it's a little synthesizer. And you know what? Like, I don't know why, but I stuck flowers on it because when I was making this headband for a different thing, I had these flowers left over because I had to buy a bouquet of like fake flowers from Walmart, and I just wanted to use the roses, but all these little pink ones were just hanging out. And I was building this, and it was like nice and green and brown, and I thought, you know what, flowers look really good with green and brown, and I don't want to just throw those flowers in the trash. So now they're part of the synthesizer, and it's not very good for making music, but it's kind of fun. And I'm sure, you know, someone with musical capabilities could probably make something cool sounding out of it. I don't have any musical talents. So, but yeah, I'm like 15 minutes over now. So I'm going to stop yammering. And I guess if Barb wants to cut it off here, we can.
Yeah. Unless you want to show us more stuff.
No, I mean, I basically covered all the things I wanted to cover. Maybe people have questions. I don't know.
Yeah, no, this is great. I'll tell you, I've had a pretty good Saturday. This makes it a really, really good Saturday. I'm so glad. Yeah, thank you for coming and talking for us.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, and we got so much chatter of people really enjoying all of this in the comments over here. I have a question.
Yes.
Because this old junk, it talks to you.
Yes.
What's talking to you now?
What's talking to me now?
Like what's like starting to kind of percolate?
You know, I'm thinking it's time. Sometime last year, one of my friends texted me, and she was like, "Hey, Sears is going out of business, and they have a bunch of mannequins. Do you want me to buy you a mannequin?"
Ooh.
And I said, "You know, I don't have room for a mannequin." And she said, "I can buy you an arm." And I said, "Buy me an arm." And she bought me an arm, and I was like, this arm is freaking cool. And then I went and bought another arm. So I have two mannequin arms. And these mannequin arms are plastic, and they're hollow, and they're kind of translucent. And so I was like, I want to put lights inside of these arms. And I have partially played around with like putting addressable colored RGB LEDs inside of them, and playing around with this really cool product called a Pixel Blaze that I have a couple of. That's like an RGB. It's a wireless RGB LED controller, and I really want to make like a lamp, like maybe like sort of a chandelier, like a really weird chandelier that's just glowing arms that hangs from my ceiling. And like I think maybe that's going to be my next project, because right now they've been sitting on my bedroom floor for like since August. So I think I need to pick them up and put them on the ceiling. So I think that's going to be my next project. And those arms, again, like I didn't have a purpose for them, but when I saw like that they kind of glowed if you shine light inside of them, I was like, these have to become a lamp. That's their destiny. So that's what's going to happen to them.
Oh my gosh, that's great. And it's kind of hilarious for me right now because I have access to a torso without arms that sounds extremely similar.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm almost feeling like this has to be some kind of coordinating.
I like that. All right. Well, we can hold each other to account, and like we're going to have to build some sort of mannequin inspired lamp.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Oh, we have one question here from the Rachel.
Where
can I get some of
those eyeball pasties? You know, I made these, and if if you want, I can send you I think I have DXF file somewhere, or I might have them as an Illustrator file. I can send you the Illustrator file, but I did not buy these anywhere. I designed them in Illustrator, and then when I still had access to things at work before the pandemic, I used the laser cutter at work to cut them out of felt. So if you have access to a laser cutter, I'll send you the file. If you don't, you can cut them with scissors. But yeah, they're not a product anywhere. Just something I made.
Very cool.
All right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, unless we have other things. Oh, background ambient for suspense films like this. Yeah. Oh, wait. One more. One last question. The favorite era for technology to salvage?
Yes. There's a good era from, I don't know, maybe the mid 1960s up to the beginning of the 1980s. It's a really good chunk of time where before the 1960s, things were, I don't know, they use different materials that aren't quite as durable. I mean, there's some cool stuff before the 1960s. There's some cool stuff in the 50s, but you can't repurpose a lot of stuff that's really old, either because it's too degraded from being really old, or because you don't want to, you feel bad taking stuff apart when it's really old. I would feel really bad drilling holes in an old Bakelite radio to repurpose it, because it's an antique at this point. But by the 1960s, we really got a consumer culture going strongly enough that they churned stuff out in large amounts, and so stuff was more disposable. But it hadn't gotten really cheap yet either. So the materials were churned out in large amounts, but they were still durable materials. So there was a good chunk of time there from the 60s up until the 80s where the electronics, you can reuse them, and the guts of the things, they weren't entirely electronified, so there's still mechanical bits to reuse. So yeah, and but I'll grab stuff from any period of time, honestly. If I can, you can't see it, but up there on one of my shelves is a pair of plaster teeth that bite, and they're attached to a gear motor that's probably from 1915. So I'll use stuff from any era, but I really like that 60s and 70s stuff for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. Yay. Well, this is an excellent end to the talks this evening. Yeah. Thank you again.
Well, thank you, Bert. This was fun.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, this was the last talk of the night. Feel free, everybody, to hang around the space with us, and you too, Emily, if you want. And if anybody, oh wait, where do we find you, Emily? If anybody wants to see more of your stuff.
Oh well, I'm very, very online on Twitter. So if you want to just see all my dumb thoughts and pictures of my cat and my vegetables that I grow outside and every dumb thing that comes into my head, you can find me on Twitter. It's twitter.com/MLE_online. I'm also on YouTube. I took kind of a little hiatus of putting up videos on YouTube for a lot of quarantine, just because I don't know, I didn't want to do it. But I'm getting back on a schedule of putting my videos on YouTube, and you can find me at Emily's Electric Oddities. I'm also on Instagram. Barb doesn't have that one because I forgot to tell
that one.
It's Instagram.com/Emily_makes. And then also, if you just look me up online as a day job, I am a science writer. And if you look me up, you're probably going to find my articles that I write about science for work. So yeah, I'm out there.
Very cool. Yeah.
Oh, anyone else know if I've ever collaborated with musicians? And the answer is no, because I don't have any musician friends. But if anyone is a musician and wants to collaborate, just hit me up and we can talk.
I was going to say, that's not true. You know musicians. You just don't know you know musicians.
Oh, well, then they need to reveal themselves so we can get working on things.
Okay.
All right.
We'll do that. Yeah. All right. So yeah, this is our last talk for tonight. We're going to hang out. We might go up to the dance floor, get some music cranking. If anybody wants to join us, again, we're going to have more talks tomorrow. First one is at 11 a.m. by Pacific time by Donna Umali. and it'll be fun. You can find all the links and info and stuff at bit.ly/art.happens-show or at blog.crashbase.org/art-happens. This is easier. But yeah. So yeah, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
We'll see you later.